1969, a man who had just been rejected by Hollywood sat alone and made a declaration. He didn't write it to convince anyone else. He wrote it to remove ambiguity inside himself. What followed wasn't manifestation, it was system coherence. Bruce Lee is often remembered for what he said, but words are downstream. If we want to understand why his life unfolded the way it did, we have to look at what he consistently practiced, not motivation, not belief, principles. Inner physics doesn't ask whether someone was talented or lucky. Inner physics asks whether their internal system was coherent. Bruce Lee's was. Principle 1. The collapse of fantasy. Bruce Lee did not separate thinking from doing. Bruce Lee collapsed the gap between the two. In physics, a wave function collapses when it is observed. In inner physics, reality collapses when observation and action occur at the exact same moment. This is where most systems break. Some people live in observation, planning, visualizing, understanding, but never acting. Others live in action, effort, repetition, grind, but without reflection. Inner physics treats these as incomplete systems. Observation without action is fantasy. Action without observation is chaos. Bruce Lee collapsed the gap between the two. He studied relentlessly and trained relentlessly. He refined his philosophy inside the act of doing. This created a closed feedback loop. Observe, act, adjust, repeat. That loop is intelligence. Principle 2. Remove internal contradiction. One of the least discussed aspects of Bruce Lee's discipline was his intolerance for internal contradiction. Contradiction wastes energy. When a system holds two competing identities, who I am versus who I want to be, it creates destructive interference in your quantum field. It fragments attention. This is internal drag. Bruce Lee eliminated this interference or fragmentation early. He did not rehearse identities he didn't intend to live into. He did not narrate failure as personality. He did not describe himself in ways he was unwilling to reinforce. This wasn't positivity. It was energy conservation. A coherent system moves faster because it isn't arguing with itself. Principle 3. Language is not symbolic, it is instructional. Bruce Lee treated language as operational input. In inner physics terms, language is how identity is continuously updated. Every repeated phrase becomes a boundary condition, a default expectation, a behavioral constraint. This is why he was precise, not optimistic, not dramatic, precise. He understood something subtle. A system will always behave in accordance with the identity it is repeatedly instructed to maintain. Change the instructions, and behavior reorganizes without force. Principle 4. Adaptation is superior to control. Bruce Lee did not try to dominate environments. He adapted faster than they could constrain him. This is the deeper meaning behind be water. Water does not oppose form. It does not cling to structure. It responds in real time. Water is the ultimate metaphor for superposition. It can be solid, liquid, or gas, responding in real time to its container. Rigid systems require prediction. Adaptive systems require awareness. Bruce Lee chose awareness. From an inner physics perspective, this is the highest intelligence a system can express. Responsiveness without attachment. Movement without rigidity. Identity without fixation. This is why his philosophy scaled beyond martial arts. Principle 5. Identity precedes outcome. Bruce Lee did not wait for permission to become who he was. He did not wait for validation, roles, or approval. Identity was not something he earned. It was something he selected and lived into. Once identity stabilized, outcomes followed. Not magically, logically. Behavior aligns with identity. Opportunity aligns with behavior. Results align with coherence. Inner physics doesn't call this manifestation. It calls it inevitability. Principle 6. Coherence creates velocity. When thought, language, emotion, and action point in the same direction, a system accelerates. Bruce Lee's rise wasn't sudden. It was unresisted. There was no internal drag. No part of him was pulling against the direction he was moving. Velocity is not speed. Velocity is speed with direction. Bruce Lee had direction early. There is one more principle that completes Bruce Lee's system, and it's often misunderstood. Principle 7. Resistance is information, not opposition. Once internal contradiction is removed, resistance no longer feels personal. Bruce Lee did not interpret resistance as a sign of failure. He interpreted it as information. Most systems treat friction as opposition, something to avoid, something to push against, something that means this isn't working. But in inner physics, resistance is feedback. It tells the system where structure still exists, where adaptation is incomplete, where rigidity remains, internally or externally. Bruce Lee encountered resistance everywhere. In Hollywood, in traditional martial arts communities, in cultural expectations, in institutions that had no category for him. But he did not internalize that resistance as identity. He did not narrate it as rejection. He treated it as data. This is a critical distinction. When resistance is personalized, energy collapses inward. When resistance is informational, strategy evolves. Bruce Lee adjusted form without abandoning direction. He refined method without diluting intent. In inner physics terms, he allowed the system to self-correct in motion. This is rare. Most people stop when friction appears. Others push harder in the same direction. Bruce Lee did neither. He adapted through the resistance until the environment reorganized around him. This is why his philosophy was not fragile. It didn't require smooth conditions. It didn't depend on approval. It didn't break under pressure. Resistance did not slow the system. It informed it. This is not about becoming Bruce Lee. It's about recognizing where your system leaks energy, where observation never becomes action, where action lacks reflection, where language undermines identity, where rigidity replaces adaptability. Inner physics does not ask you to believe. It asks you to notice, because systems correct themselves once incoherence is seen clearly. Bruce Lee didn't force reality to comply. He removed internal resistance until only one direction remained. When observation and action collapse into one movement, the system stops drifting. Inner physics invites you to become fluid again. Be water.